Hare Krishna, welcome. This is Krishna Dasa. Today we are going to cover Shlokas 6.24 to 6.30. These are very powerful lessons we are going to learn today. Very profound wisdom, Vedantic wisdom. So if you are feeling sleepy or something, please put some cold water and make sure you are fresh. You don't want to miss this moment today. Okay, before we begin, let me say the prayers to Guru and God. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Milittamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna.
Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraya, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Now I'm going to play the slokas. Again, it is 6.24 to 6.30. Please keep it open in front of you so that you can follow. Shall I start? Okay.
Sankalpa prabhavan kamas tyakva sarvana sheshataha manasayvendriya gramam viniyam yasamantataha shanai shanairu paramed buddhya dhruti grihitaya atma samstham manah kritva na kinchidapi chintayet yato yato nischalati manaschanchalamassthiram ततस्ततो नियम्यैतदात्मन्येव वशं नयेत् प्रशान्तमनसं ह्येनं योगिनं सुखमुत्तमम् उपैति शान्तरजसं ब्रह्मभूतमकल्मषम् युञ्जन्नेवं सदात्मानं योगी विगतकल्मषः सुखेन ब्रह्म संस्पर्शमत्यन्तं सुखमश्नुते सर्वभूतस्थमात्मानं सर्वभूतानि चात्मनि ईक्षते योगयुक्तात्मा सर्वत्र समदर्शनः यो मां पश्यति सर्वत्र सर्वं च मयि पश्यति तस्याहं न प्रणश्यामि स च मे न प्रणश्यति.
Hare Krishna. I think today Rajesh ji is going to read the translations.
Yes, Guruji. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
It's 24 and 25. Let go of all desires that come from worldly thoughts and use your mind to control your senses from every direction. Gradually and with firm belief, focus your mind solely on God. In time, your thoughts will be occupied with nothing but the divine. 6.26. Whenever and wherever the restless and unsteady mind wanders, one should bring it back and continually focus on the Bhagwan. 6.27. The highest bliss and happiness comes to the yogi whose mind is calm, whose passion is subdued, who is without sin and who sees everything in connection with God. 6.28. Such a self-controlled yogi, always focused on the Atman, becomes free from the material contamination and being in constant touch with the Supreme, achieve the highest state of bliss and happiness. 6.29. The true yogis who are self-realized see with equal eyes the presence of the Supreme in everyone and everything. Samadarshanaanyaha. 6.30. For those who see me in everywhere and sees all things in me, I am never lost, and nor they are lost, nor they ever lost to me. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you so much. You see, there are so many profound pieces of wisdom you already heard now in these slokas. So in the previous set of slokas, you remember we studied about, or Krishna ji explained about Maya. What is Maya? That is what we studied, correct? The nature of Maya and how it is helping create the illusion of separation from the divine. That was what we discussed in the previous set of slokas. Now we are going to understand with that understanding, with that context, now we are going to try to understand the nature of Brahman. So in the last set of shlokas, we understood Maya and what is causing separation. But separation from what? We said separation from Brahman. But how do we understand Brahman? What is it that we are separate from? That profoundness. So that is what we are going to try and explain today. You will not find it directly in the Bhagavad Gita book. I have kind of read many other pieces of literature. I've tried to put this together and I've tried to make it as simple as possible. This is all coming from Advaita Vedanta. But I think this is a very, very important, very crucial and very profound piece of knowledge that we should all have. If we can, revisit this teaching many times, eventually it will make sense. Eventually we will have that aha moment. That is priceless. So that is why I'm trying to bring it all here in the context of these shlokas. So you understand what is Vedanta. We spoke about this right at the beginning when we did introduction to Bhagavad Gita. So the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutra, the Bhagavad Gita, when you take all of them together, that is what is called as Vedanta. Now, specifically, we are talking about Advaita Vedanta. There, the word Brahman is used to refer to the Supreme in Vedanta. Now, what does Brahman mean? The word Brahman itself means swell or expand. Now, if you translate it to English, the translation would be vast. That is the translation for Brahman. Okay. But it is not he or she. It is just vast. Vast what? That is not qualified. It is just vast without anything attached to it. And the word just preceding Brahman is Anantam. Anantam means with no limit. So the complete word is Anantam Brahman. That is what is meant by being infinite, being without any limit. See, you may know Antam in Sanskrit means limit. Anantam means no limit, unlimited. So what is meant by limit? Let us try to understand that. What is the limit that we are talking about? So, Vedanta describes three kinds of limits. Limits or limitations. What are the three kinds? So Vedanta says those three kinds of limits are Desha, Kala and Vastu, which translates to space, time and object. In other words, the three limits are the limits in space, limits in time and limits in object. So what does Desha means? Desha means something can exist only in one location at any given time. So in other words, if you are in Canada, you cannot be in India at the same time. It seems pretty logical. That is Desha, limitation of space. Something that is... So what does it mean when something is not limited by space? Now we understand, it is very easy to understand what does it mean by limited in space. That yes, if I am here, then I cannot also be there at the same time. Very simple, right? But what does it mean if that limit doesn't exist? Then that basically means you can be anywhere and everywhere at the same time. In other words, there is no location or space where you are not. No, that is the true meaning of omnipresent. We say God is omnipresent means what? That basically means God does not have, Brahman is not bound by the limitation of Desha. In other words, we use the word Desh very differently. We say Mera Desh. But basically it is derived from this limitation, which means it is limited by location. The next limitation is Kala. Kala is the limit in time. That means something exists only after it is created and before it is destroyed. And that is also easy to understand. In other words, every one of us here in this session, we had a birth. We started existing after that birth and we are going to stay until the death. That is the existence of this body. So that is the limitation of Kala. So any material thing that we see they follow this, or they are all bound by this limitation, because they all came into existence at some point and they will be destroyed at some point. So in 2.27, Krishna says something similar. I think Chitraji, you want to read 2.27?
Hare Krishna. 2.27 Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityu dhruvam janma smrutasya cha tasmad pariharyerthe natvam shojitumarhasi. For one who has taken his birth, death is certain, and for one who is dead, birth is certain. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament.
Excellent. See, so Krishna has said the same thing back in 2nd chapter. So he's talking about this limitation of Kala, where he says, if you are born, you have to die. And if you are dead, you are supposed to be born. But that talks about this limitation also. Now, when we say Brahman is not bound by this limitation, when we say Brahman is not bound by Kala, what does it mean? That means Brahman was never created. And because Brahman was never created, Brahman can never be destroyed. Brahman always existed, and Brahman will always continue to exist. See. And what is the third limitation? The third limitation is Vastu. Now, this is a very interesting limitation, because the limitation of Vastu basically translates to limitation of object. That is, it is not Vastu, it is Vastu. So in Hindi, we use the word Vastu. Anything is a Vastu. But that is derived from that Sanskrit word, which is saying limitation of object. What does that mean? It is a very interesting concept. It means everything is itself and nothing else. For example, a stone is just a stone. In other words, a stone cannot be a stone and a flower at the same time. If I am Krishnadasa, then I cannot also be Ramdasa or Shivadasa. Like, I can only be what I am. I cannot be something else at the same time. So every object or every Vastu has an identity. And that identity makes it different from everything else in the universe. Makes sense? It seems pretty straightforward that, like, once you say I am something, like I am Apurva, I am Smita, I am Ekansh, you are giving an identity, and then there is no other identity, nothing else that can be Ekansh, nothing else that can be Smita. You see? Now, suppose something does not have this limitation, then what does it mean? What would it be? Now, you cannot even comprehend it. That is why I said it's a very interesting limitation, because it's not even easy to comprehend anything or anybody who does not have this limitation. Because what that means is, if you are not limited by Vastu, if you are not limited by object, that means there is nothing in the universe which is different from you. See how profound it is. There is nothing in the universe which is separate from you. Because you are not bound by the limitation of object. It's very, very profound. So when we say Brahman is not bound by the limitation of object, Vastu, that means Brahman is everything at the same time. Brahman is this also, Brahman is that also. We are bound by Vastu, the limitation. So if we are Deepali, we cannot be Ekansh also. If we are Ashaji, we cannot be Chitra also. But that is our limitation. But if Brahman is beyond the limitation of object, then Brahman is everything at the same time. Brahman is Deepali also, Brahman is Asha also, Brahman is Sulata also. You see? Now, this is what is meant by Advaita. This is the essence of Advaita Vedanta. This is what it means when they say the concept of non-duality. Okay? So, Brahman is non-dual. So, when we say Brahman is Anantam, that implies Brahman is Sarvabhyapi, which is all-pervading, Nityam, which is eternal, and Advaitam, which is non-dual. All of these are packed into one powerful word, Anantam. Now we can have a better understanding of this word, of this term Aham Brahmasmi. What does that actually mean? Now we will get a better perspective and context on that. Because if we cannot be separate from Brahman, that is what we just discussed, because Brahman is not bound by Vastu. In other words, you cannot say that Brahman is not Krishna Dasa. You cannot say that Brahman is not Lakshmi Ji. Brahman is not Sulata. You cannot say that. Because Brahman is not bound by limitation of object. Brahman is everything at the same time. So Brahman has to be Sulata also. Brahman has to be Deepa also. Brahman has to be Asha also. Brahman has to be Sujata also. That is the concept of Aham Brahmasmi. The real meaning. It doesn't make you powerful enough to say that I am God. It makes Brahman powerful enough to say that Brahman can be you. Brahman can be Brahman is you. Brahman is everything that you can see. So in other words, we cannot be separate from Brahman, because if we are separate from Brahman, that would imply that Brahman has a limitation. That would imply that Brahman, okay, if I say I'm separate from Brahman, that means Brahman is not me. That means we are limiting Brahman. But Brahman is not bound by the limitation. So that statement is false. So that is why we say that Aham Brahmasmi, Brahman is non-dual. We are not the quality of Advaita Vedanta. That is what it all talks about. But what happens? In other words, this is another way to describe Brahman. Brahman is also described as Ekam Evam Advaitam. One only, non-dual. But we continue to suffer the illusion of separation. And in the previous set of shlokas, that is what we explained. Why we suffer this separation? Where is that illusion of separation coming from? That was the game of Maya. Now you see why the job of Maya is so difficult. Because Brahman inherently doesn't have any limitation. No limitation of Kala, no limitation of Vastu, no limitation of Desha. So Brahman and you cannot be separate. But then how to make you feel like you are separate? Isn't that a big task? That was the task of Maya. So something eternal, all-pervading, non-dual, it is not easy to comprehend. We cannot easily comprehend this. Because why? Because by that definition, now comes the real profound part. Because based on what we have just studied, by that definition, Brahman has to be here right now. Right here. Anything you choose to see, anything you are seeing right now has to be Brahman, correct? That is what we discussed. Because Brahman is not bound by Desha, Kala or Vastu, so there cannot be anything that you see where Brahman is not. In fact, one Guruji said very, very nicely, he said, everybody thinks that we have to go in search of God. He says, as always, we have everything opposite. You know, our concept is always ulta, opposite. Because he says, you don't have to go searching for God. God is everywhere. Try searching for something where there is no God. He said, try that. Then automatically you will come to the realization, God realization, because you will come to the understanding that God is everywhere. You see, so this may explain in a different context what Krishna meant by Samadarshanaha. See, where Krishna said equal vision. How can you see a cow and a goat and a Brahman, everybody? It is not just that he's not talking about a mentally disturbed condition. He's talking about an elevated condition where you are actually understanding the concept that Brahman is not bound by Desha, Kala or Vastu. Brahman is everywhere. Brahman is always, and Brahman is non-dual. And that is what Krishna said in Shloka 5.18. Chitraji, you want to read that also?
Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Kavi Hastini Shunichaiva Shvapakecha Panditaha Samadarshina. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with eco-vision a learned and gentle Brahman, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater. That is somebody who's outcast. Hare
So now
Krishna.
I hope this shloka gives you a different context. I hope now this shloka makes more sense, because without any knowledge, if we just read that shloka in isolation, somebody can see a cow and a goat and a Brahmin and everybody in this. It doesn't really mean much. It doesn't really make sense. It leaves us wondering, what is Krishna saying? How can I see a dog and a goat and everything similarly? It just remains theory. But now with this knowledge that you gained today, that shloka will make more sense. That is the true meaning of Samadarshana. That means you have realized the true nature of Brahman. And once you have realized the true nature of Brahman, you will realize that there is nothing separate from Brahman. Everything that you can see is Brahman. That is what Samadarshana. So Upanishads, they take a great effort to show this eternal, all-pervading, non-dual nature of Brahman. The Sanskrit word Satyam stands for reality. Satyam stands for truth. Satyam also stands for existence. These are the three different aspects of the word Satyam. And the Upanishad asks us to introspect. It says, look upon reality. The Upanishads, if you study the Upanishads, they will tell you that look around. What do you consider as real? Look around and say what is real. Now you can say, well, I consider my body to be real. You can say that I consider this mobile phone to be real. I consider all the people in this satsang to be real. Now, do you all consider that? Do you consider that? Yes, because the phone is real, everybody in this room is real, correct? Okay. Now the Upanishad will say, apply the definition. What is the definition? If it is real, it has to be Brahman. That is what we just studied. Correct? Now, Brahman is not bound by Desha, Kala, Vastu. So if anything is real, it should be Brahman. But then here is where the challenge arises. Now, take any object that you consider to be real. Ekansh, which object you want to pick?
Glass.
Glass, okay. Now, is that glass limited in time? In other words, can you say that this glass was created at some point and it will exist only until it is just okay? Is that glass limited by space? In other words, can that glass be here also, there also?
No.
It is limited by space.
Yeah, I mean, limited by space. It can be only here, right?
Yeah, and is it limited by object? Like, can the glass also be a phone at the same time? No. Yes, of course. You are right. No, it is bound by all three limitations. Then how can it be Brahman? Because we just said that Brahman is beyond all these limitations. Does anybody else feel like there is a contradiction? Smita ji? Smita Srinivas, do you see a contradiction?
Not really.
You've come a long way. Yes. Yes, you see, but this is a perceived contradiction.
The basic, the glass qualities is everywhere. So that is the Brahman.
Yeah, now I will try to explain this. Okay, so this is where students, they start to struggle with comprehension, because they say that what is real has to be Brahman. Anything that you can see has to be Brahman. Now, Brahman is supposed to be without limits, but then whatever you see is limited. Then how can the limited things be Brahman? This is how the whole argument comes, and this is how where the people start putting in a perceived contradiction, and they try to limit God this way. So if I ask it in another way, everything that we can see, touch, smell, or perceive, they are all limited in all three aspects. Anything that we can see, they are limited by space, time, and object. So then how can we see Brahman, who is beyond all limitations, in these limited objects? That is the question. So how do we actually reconcile the fact Aham Brahmasmi in the real sense? How do you reconcile the fact that Brahman is everywhere? So when Prahlada was having this heated debate with his father, Hiranyakashipu, his father is very angry. His father asks him, where is your God? And Prahlada says, he's everywhere. And Hiranyakashipu, looks at a pillar and he says, is your God here in this pillar? And Prahlada says, yes. With full conviction, he says, yes. And you know the story. Then he breaks the pillar, and that is where Narasimha. But it is not just a fairy tale. The story has a very deep essence about the nature of Brahman. That is what we just discussed. No limitation of Desha, Kala, or Vastu. And then how do we reconcile the fact that whatever, like Ekant said, I am looking at a glass, but it is limited. Now you are telling me that that is also Brahman, but you say Brahman is unlimited. So how can an unlimited be in a limited? That is the question. No, what we have to understand is the Vedas and the Upanishads, they never say anything contradictory. There is no contradiction in the Vedas. And they also don't speak nonsense, ever. So the Vedas are not going to just say something which doesn't make sense. So then how do we comprehend when something seems contradictory is the question. Okay, because whenever something seems contradictory, the contradiction is in our mind. The contradiction is not in what is actually being said. Okay, so one of the rules to keep in mind when you read Vedantic texts is that whenever you find something which is seemingly contradictory, you have to take the implied meaning. Let me try to explain this further. So, the Upanishads say that make a list of things you see around you that you can call as reality. And how do you experience these realities? Are you all still with me? Are you all fresh? Do you all need a break? You're all okay?
No
Okay.
break.
Okay. So, Vedanta says make a list of all the things that you call real. And how do you experience these realities? So, when we say something is real, what does it actually mean? When Ekansh is saying the glass is real, what he actually means is that the glass exists. Correct? That is the meaning. So, in other words, reality according to us is that which exists. So, everything that we see, it may be different from each other. But what is common across everything that you can see? What is common is they all exist. The phone is, the table is, the teacher is, Deepa is, Chitra is. In other words, everything exists. Now you have to change your perspective and think of there being an ocean of existence. And everything that exists is like a wave in that ocean. See, the waves are all different from each other. You can identify each wave and say that wave, this wave, small wave, big wave. They're all different, but they're all temporary and they're all part of the same ocean. Now apply that word infinity to this sentence of existence. In other words, infinity means it must not be limited by space. It must not be limited by time. So, now focus on what we just spoke. Now we are saying instead of what exists, focus on the essence of existence. Now can we say that existence itself is omnipresent? Can we say that existence is everywhere? If you can see, it exists. So shift your focus. In other words, instead of focusing on the waves and saying different, shift your focus to the ocean and say that all these waves, they are part of the same ocean. The waves may be limited, but what they are part of is not limited. So whatever you can think of, see, this is also very profound. If you can think of something, it means that thing exists. I challenge you, if one of you can think of something that doesn't exist, it's not possible. Whatever you can think of exists. No. Now you can say the chair exists, the table exists, you can say they are both different, but then they are both part of the same existence. That is how you choose to see things as per Vedanta, as per Upanishad. Just like that, look around you and next time, instead of focusing on what exists, try to focus on the existence. Instead of focusing on the waves, try to focus on the ocean that the waves belong to. Okay. So when the entire universe is destroyed, everything that exists is going to cease to exist. That makes sense, right? Like when we say the universe is going to be destroyed, then everything in the universe that you think exists today is no longer going to exist. However, existence itself has to continue. Everything just goes back to that eternal which always exists. Just like that, the waves, yeah, they are going to get destroyed, but they're going to go back to the ocean. They merge with the ocean again. They may seem to be appearing, disappearing, temporary, different, all of that. Imagine two waves fighting with each other. I am superior, you are inferior. I'm white wave, you are a black wave, and you are sitting here laughing. You're like, what do you mean? You're going to last for a few minutes and then very soon you're going to be part of the ocean, and then there is no longer a white wave and a black wave. You're just part of the ocean. Just like that, here we are busy saying, I'm superior, I'm an engineer, I'm a doctor, I'm this, I'm that, I. But what we have to understand is eventually we are part of the existence. We are all bound by Desha, Kala, Vastu. We are all temporary. We are going to go away. And what is eternal, we are going to merge back into that existence. See, what we have to understand, now I'm telling you something even more profound, which may help you change your perspective a little bit. So let us say there is a signboard which is pointing to, like, I know people like vacations here. So take any famous vacation, Disneyland. So there is a signboard that is pointing to Disneyland. Now there is this person who goes and hugs the signboard and starts, getting totally attached with that signboard because he's like, I love Disneyland. No, you're going to say that this guy is just foolish. If you love Disneyland, go to Disneyland. The signboard is just pointing. It is just showing you how to go to Disneyland. Why are you getting attached to the signboard? You like Disneyland, you're supposed to go to Disneyland. That makes sense, right? So just like that, when you see all the various objects around you, people, objects, anything that you can see, instead of getting attached to them, you have to focus on what they're pointing to. They're all pointing towards that infinite existence, that eternal existence, the creator. And we are busy getting attached to the objects. You see the drama that we get into. This is why Krishna keeps saying detachment, 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 detachment. Because attachment is like that man or woman who is going and hugging the signboard and getting stuck there with the signboard. Like, I'm not going to leave the signboard my whole life because I love Disneyland. The signboard says Disneyland. And we are saying that person is foolish. But we are all foolish. Because we get attached to all the objects around us, everything that we can see, without understanding that they are all just like signboards which are pointing to the glorious creator who created them. And instead of focusing on the creator, we are all getting attached to the created. That is why we need to practice detachment. I hope now that makes more sense. Because, some people get annoyed. They are like, throughout the Bhagavad Gita, you keep saying detachment, detachment. Do you want to be emotionless? Do you want to be this? No, now you see the bigger meaning, the deeper meaning of why we have to practice detachment. Detachment basically means don't get stuck to the signboard. Go to the destination where the signboard is pointing to. Yeah. So when we say Nirguna Nirakar, now this is another argument people come up with. No, Nirguna Nirakar is also still existing. That is why we are able to name it. So Nirguna Nirakar also exists. It just cannot be experienced. So that which exists but cannot be experienced is Nirguna Nirakar. And that which can be experienced is Saguna Sakar. These are the two aspects of Brahman. Again, pure existence, not limited by space, time, object. So anything that is apart from existence does not exist. Now the sentence again, I'll repeat the sentence. Anything that is apart from existence does not exist. Does it seem logical? I mean, it's a very logical statement. There is no profound, abstract wisdom here. Anything that is not part of existence does not exist. It is like saying that the waves exist but the ocean doesn't exist. And you will say that is stupid. It's not possible. But the same thing applies to anything that exists. It cannot exist apart from existence. Existence is always there. What exists may cease to exist, but existence will never cease to exist. So just like the existence of waves is an indication of the existence of the ocean, sometimes when it is very stormy, all you can see are waves. But that doesn't mean the ocean doesn't exist. Just like that, you can have golden ornaments. You can say my bangle is better than my necklace, or your necklace is better than my necklace, but can they exist without gold? No. A chair, a table, they're all different, but can they exist without wood? So that is why we have to change our perspective. Nothing can exist without existence itself. And that existence is Anantam Brahman. So to reiterate, Brahman is not limited by space, not limited by time. Brahman is not limited by object, which means there is no thing which is separate or apart from Brahman. If you can comprehend this, then you would have understood the true meaning of Advaita. Then you would have understood the true meaning of Aham Brahmasmi. There is no one thing in the universe which is separate from Brahman. With this understanding, my request to all of you is, with this understanding, try to look around with a different perspective now. Now try to look around. Anything beautiful that you like, immediately think of what created this beauty. Anything that you think is great, anything that you think is charming, anything you think you are getting attached to, turn your focus to, okay, this is a signboard to something profound that created it. You see? And that is one of the best ways to elevate yourself on the path to real realization of Brahman consciousness. Now, how can you do this? Now I'm going to tie the dots together. Whatever I spoke so far in this session today, you will not find it directly in your book that you have. This is Vedanta, basically. I'm bringing it here because I think it adds a lot of value to what we are studying. But whatever I have said now, if you have to practice, what do you need? It's not possible to practice it if you have a disturbed mind, agitated mind, if you have a depressed mind and all of that, you cannot. If you have to practice this, your mind has to be calm. Your mind has to be focused. Only then you can internalize this knowledge and practice it. So how do you make your mind calm? How do you make your mind focused? That is Dhyana Yoga. So let us come back to Dhyana Yoga now and see what else Krishna is talking about to advance in Dhyana Yoga. Okay. So in these Shlokas, 6.24 to 6.30, Shri Krishna is talking more about Dhyana Yoga, and he's explaining that Dhyana or meditation itself consists of two parts or two steps. Now, we are going to dive deep into this Dhyana Yoga. So I just need a quick small break. I'm going to go take a glass of water. I'll be back. So if you want, you guys also feel free. Let's take a very short break. Okay. Hare Krishna. Welcome back. I know we had a lot of heavy discussion, so I want to make sure that we are all continue to be fresh for the remaining part of the session. Let's just give a minute or two for a few members to come back. Okay, I think most of us are back. Apurva ji, Smita ji, are you back? Okay, Apurva is back. Chitra ji is back. Let's give a few seconds for Deepa ji to be back, and Smita ji is also back. Okay. Deepa ji, are you back? Is it? Do you think I'm going too fast, or you think it's okay? It's making sense. You are able to follow.
This is brilliant, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, Asha ji. Okay, I think almost everybody is back. Okay, welcome back, Deepa ji. I think everybody is back. So we can continue. So we were saying that this thing we discussed about this whole concept of Advaita Vedanta and how to actually comprehend this Brahman, we can practice only if our mind is calm and focused. And if you have to be calm and focused, then that is where the Dhyana Yoga comes into place. Krishna has taught Dhyana Yoga. So we already studied Dhyana Yoga. Now let us proceed in Dhyana Yoga. So let us see what Krishna is teaching in Shlokas 6.24 to 6.30. So Dhyana consists of two parts. What is the first part or first step? You can say two parts or you can say two steps. Both are the same thing. The first step is you have to make sure that the mind is not distracted by the various disturbances. That is the first step. Avoid the distractions or deal with distractions. The second part or second step is once you have avoided distractions, then fix and focus the mind on Brahman. Very easy, just 2 steps. If you understand 2 steps, you have understood Dhyana. Now, Shri Krishna is now first describing the first part of the process on how to avoid these distractions so that you can practice the second part, which is how to get your mind to focus on Brahman. Okay, so now let us now discuss how do we get rid of distractions. Now there are some beautiful concepts here. Now, how does the mind get disturbed? What does the mind get disturbed about? Mind is disturbed about worldly things. The mind is disturbed about the million things we are attached to. Our attachments, they are causing a lot of disturbance. Now, again, I'm trying to bring in the technical aspects also so that it's kind of very profound, and I don't want to dilute any of the message. So I'm kind of digging deeper into the Vedanta aspect as well here. So initially, when we have thoughts of anything, that is known as sphurna. Sphurna is feelings and ideas. Now, if the intellect is weak, in the previous chapters we discussed that the intellect is the boss. The intellect tells the mind what it should focus on, and then the intellect goes away. The intellect is like that, naughty friend who will come and prod you. Hey, have you not got the latest iPhone? And the friend is gone. But for the next 1 month, you cannot think of anything other than the new iPhone. Just like that, the intellect is the boss. The intellect will tell the mind what it is supposed to focus on. Now, if the intellect is weak, what is going to happen? It is going to instruct the mind to focus on this sphurna. In other words, whatever it was thinking on, the ideas, feelings. And then the mind starts desiring to materialize this sphurna. Like sphurna is the thought it has, the feelings, emotions. For example, gulab jamun, that is a thought, that's a feeling, that is sphurna. Now the intellect is weak. It is not able to tell the mind it is going to give you sugar problem. Now the mind is going to try to materialize that thought. Now when you try to materialize that thought, that becomes Sankalpa. So that is what is known as Sankalpa. So thoughts create sphurna, and when the mind runs in pursuit of sphurna, it leads to Sankalpa. Now the beautiful concept is, if the mind is running behind sphurna, it becomes Sankalpa. Now if the mind is running away from the sphurna, it becomes Vikalpa. So these are the 2 very important words. Sankalpa means you are running behind what the sphurna is, and Vikalpa is you are running away from what this sphurna is. Now attachment to sphurna leads to Sankalpa, aversion to sphurna leads to Vikalpa. Makes sense? Now that is why we discussed earlier that both attachment and aversion are a problem. Because be it attachment or be it aversion, what you are doing? You are running. And how can you be calm when you are running? So you should not be running in either direction. That is why Krishna says avoid attachment as well as aversion. Okay. Liking and disliking, they are 2 sides of the same coin. And this is what we discussed. So make a quick note somewhere that you are supposed to revise Shloka 2.28 to 2.30. And you can go and revise it later, because those shlokas, they talk about the same aspect. Because there we discussed about sanskara, and we discussed how sanskara has 2 sides. Every sanskara has 2 sides. So likewise, aversion and attachment are 2 sides of the same coin. Opposite of attachment is aversion, opposite of aversion is attachment. So why aversion is also bad is because we discussed earlier, like if you try to force yourself to not think about something, you're going to have the same effect as thinking about that thing. Like gulab jamun, we just said gulab jamun, which is a very favorite sweet. Now if you tell your mind, don't think of gulab jamun, don't think of gulab jamun, I don't want gulab jamun, I'm not going to, but everywhere you will only see gulab jamun now. So that is why aversion is as much a problem as attachment. Okay. Both Sankalpa and Vikalpa, they are creating impressions on the mind. And when they create impressions on the mind, they are deepening our sanskaras. And when the sanskaras get deepened, they cause impulsive behavior. You cannot escape that. It is a science. It is how the universe works. It is how the body works. There is no cheating. Okay, so if you are full of Sankalpa and Vikalpa, all your life you are either running behind something or you are running away from something, you have very strong likes and dislikes. I love this food, I love that dress, and at the same time I hate this person, I hate this music. If you are full of that, there is no way you are going to get to the state of calming your mind and focusing your mind, because it is always running either this way or that way. Such a strong, simple, profound technique here. And the other thing to keep in mind is, the more you run, the stronger your impulse to run becomes. Okay, I can revisit this later if you are interested. So that is why we have to avoid attachment and aversion, so that we stop running and we try to avoid this whole distraction part. So the step one that we said, distraction, the easiest way to practice step one of Dhyana Yoga, the easiest way to get rid of distraction of the mind is understand the mechanism of the mind and understand how it works, and understand that is why we are studying Bhagavad Gita, because the intellect has to become strong. This is the purpose, not to show off. Not to show off that I am a scholar in Bhagavad Gita, I can recite all shlokas. That is not the goal. The goal is it is to purify and sharpen your intellect, so that the intellect can then give the right message to your mind. And once the intellect keeps giving the right message to your mind will then start coming under control. And once the mind is under control, you will be able to make it calm and focused. And once you do that, everything else we studied becomes easy to internalize. And then you will become a Samadarshanaha, you will become a Sita Pragya, everything will follow after that. So that is a beautiful message from Shri Krishna. Now, it is not going to happen automatically, the second part. The first part, you have to focus. There's a lot of practice required. Definitely, it's not going to happen in a day, but at least the intent has to be there. Now, what is the second part of Dhyana Yoga? The second part is, once you have taken care of distractions, the second part is, now where do you focus? Now, you don't have a distraction. Now, where do you focus? There, Krishna says, focus on Bhagavan. Focus on that Supreme. And Krishna is saying that this focus is not going to come easy. Ekansh. It is very natural. You shouldn't feel frustrated that I am sitting, I'm trying to meditate, but my mind is not focusing. You cannot become a Dhyana yogi in a day or a month or a year. It is not how it works. It requires consistent effort. And Krishna has repeated this previously. Now, this determination that I am going to achieve this focus, this determination is what is called as dhriti. Now, dhriti means it comes when you have conviction and faith in your own intellect. Very, very, such a strong, it is, Krishna is not saying you just have to have faith in me. Krishna is saying you have to have faith in your own intellect. So empowering. And that is what results in dhriti. And when you have the dhriti, you use that dhriti to focus on God or Bhagavan, however you call it. So you have to internalize the learning. You cannot keep it theoretical. That is what Krishna is saying. Like, the knowledge has to be internalized. You have to practice. Okay. Now I'll give you a counter example. Fortunately or unfortunately, in my early days of my life, I have had to deal with some very, very world-renowned cardiologists. And at that time itself, I found it very ironic that a couple of them were, I don't want to take names, but they are world-famous cardiologists. They are from Pune. And what I saw was a couple of them who are the most popular, most famous cardiologists. They will make me sit in the waiting room and they will go take a smoke and they will come back. They are taking a smoking break. And I am asking myself, these people know everything about the heart. They are the experts. They know exactly what is the harm that cigarettes have. They know exactly how it impacts the heart. They know the full science of it. Then how come they are still smoking? I couldn't understand the answer until I went deep into the Bhagavad Gita. And then it made sense. that is because they don't have the dhriti. They don't have the conviction in their own intellect. That intellect is for somebody else. They don't have complete conviction in their own knowledge, their own intellect. That is why the intellect says something else and they are doing something else. Perfect real life examples you will find all around you. So that applies to us also. We can read whatever we want. We can attend as many seminars and bhashans as you want. But if you don't develop conviction in whatever knowledge you are gaining, your dhriti is going to be weak. And if your dhriti is weak, you will not be able to focus on Brahman. So it is important to develop that conviction. That is where faith, that is where surrender comes. That is why Krishna says, discard your pride and surrender, because the more you surrender, the more the conviction will be there in the knowledge that you gain. And the more conviction you have, the more you will advance yourself. So again, when somebody says surrender to the Guru or surrender to God, it is not ego biscuit for the Guru or God. It is for you to develop this conviction. That is how you will develop the conviction. Okay. Well, let us go a step ahead now. How do we strengthen the intellect? One of the ways to strengthen it is you keep reminding it that nothing is permanent. Everything is temporary. We just went through the entire Vedanta now, where we said everything is limited by space, time, and object. It is a fact. So keep telling your mind, nothing is permanent. Nothing can be permanent. By design, everything is temporary. So don't fret about these things. What is the only permanent thing? That is the absolute. The only permanent is Brahman. That is why that is the only thing which is worth your focus. That is the only true value for your focus. Everything else you are wasting. If somebody said you can buy a house that will be destroyed in 10 years, or you can buy a house that will remain for 100 years, it is such a simple thing. You will just look at me like, where is the big question? I'm of course going to buy the house which is going to last 100 years, right? Now there our brain works. But why is it not working here? That we are attached to so many things which are all temporary. You are investing your mind now. Instead of money, you are investing something more precious, which is your mind. And you are investing it into all these temporary things. Why don't you invest it in something permanent? And the only thing permanent is Brahman. That is the second part of Dhyana Yoga. Krishna says, once you internalize this knowledge, it will become dhriti. Once you have the dhriti and conviction that yes, Brahman is the absolute, not just theoretical. Once you have the conviction, then nobody has to tell you anything. Your mind will automatically start focusing on that Brahman. Very beautiful, very powerful. Okay, so first step, instruct the mind to stop focusing on temporary things. In other words, withdraw. You remember that analogy of a tortoise that Krishna gave? Like the tortoise withdraws the limbs, you should withdraw your mind from all these sensory distractions. Now, this act is called as Pratyahara. Pratyahara means you are controlling the mind and senses, and instead of going outwards to all this, you are turning them inwards. Now, Krishna also spoke about being consistent with the practice of yoga. Now, Pratyahara is a part of yoga, and so it needs consistent practice. It will not come immediately. So even the first part, which is Pratyahara, means sit and avoid distractions, that also needs a lot of practice. Now, Krishna has explained the two steps, and he has also explained the importance of Dhriti and Pratyahara. I hope you are all with me so far. Now, because many times what happens is we get disappointed. We say, oh, I tried so hard to focus, but the mind keeps getting distracted. What do I do? And all of that, Now, Krishna is telling us, don't feel disappointed. He says that is the nature. That is how the mind works. He says the mind is fickle. The mind will wander. It is natural. So then what we should do if the mind wanders? Repeat step 1 and 2 we just discussed. Step 1, Pratyahara. No attachment, no aversion, withdraw the senses. Step 2, focus on Brahman. Repeat. And you keep doing it. It's a repetitive process. Krishna has said many times that it's a process which needs consistent practice. And then what happens, the beauty is, it is like going to the gym. When you go to the gym, the first day when you try to lift a dumbbell, it's going to feel painful. And your body will rebel and all. But you keep doing it. Eventually, you will start developing muscles and the same dumbbell will feel weightless to you. Just like that, you repeat this step 1 and step 2, you keep doing pratyahara, use the dhriti to focus on Brahman, you keep doing it. Consistency is the key. So you cannot go to the gym once in a year. You are not going to develop any muscle. That we all understand. Just like that, you cannot try pratyahara and focusing on Brahman just once in a while and come back to that after a vacation. That's not going to work. It has to be consistent. But if you are consistent, Krishna says, even the intellect will develop muscles. The intellect will keep getting stronger. Your mind will keep getting stronger. And eventually it will become more and more effortless for us. It will come more and more naturally. That is why very elevated souls, they just have to sit and say Om, and that's it. They are in Samadhi. But we cannot say, I will also just sit and say Om. Nothing is going to happen. So we need practice, consistent practice of step 1 and 2. Now, one of the common questions that people ask, I have advised many people, and many of them have this one common question. They ask, how can I tell if I'm progressing? Like you are telling me that I have to keep practicing and then I will progress. My mind will become calm. But how can I tell that I'm progressing? It's a very valid question. So the only answer I have is, when our mind is becoming calmer, and more importantly, this is my favorite stanza, when your faith feels stronger than your fear. When your faith feels stronger than your fears, then you can tell that you are progressing. It's a very simple litmus test.
Please repeat.
Yeah. So all I'm saying is, when your faith feels stronger than your fears, then you can say that you are progressing. In other words, that is your conviction. That has to get better and you have to feel calmer. We all have our fears. Are the fears reducing? The situation is out of your control. There are so many fears we have. We discuss so many fears. Fear of death, fear of old age, fear of disease, fear of poverty, fear of separation, fear of loneliness. There are a million such fears we have. No, loneliness is not something that you can get rid of. Old age is not something you can avoid. Disease is not in your control. Death is certainly not in your control. So, but what is in your control? Your conviction in the Brahman, your conviction in the knowledge. When that grows, the fears will automatically reduce. And if the fears are reducing, then you can say that you are making progress. Now, Krishna is saying that when we are in Shanta Rajasam, free from passion, and Akalmasham, which is sinless, then we become Brahma Bhutam, endowed with realization of Brahman. At that stage, you are going to experience Sukham Uttamam, which is the highest bliss. Now, point to note is Krishna is making a distinction between Brahma Bhuta and Brahma Samparsha. These are technical words, but the difference basically is Brahma Bhutam means the realization of Brahman or self-realization. Brahma Bhutam means realization of the Atma, self-realization. Brahma Samparsha means God realization, realization of Paramatma. It is not that, it is both easy and confusing. What is the difference between self-realization and God realization? Because we just said that Brahman is everywhere and everything is Brahman. So why is the difference? So I'll give a small example, a silly example. Maybe it will help explain. So let us say you have 2 glasses of water. Same tap water, you are filling 2 glasses. Okay. In one glass, you are adding lemon essence, lemon concentrate. In another glass, you are adding rose essence. Now the first glass starts calling itself lemon juice. The second glass starts calling itself rose essence or rose water. Now they are fighting with each other, saying, I am better, I am superior. See? Now self-realization means what? When both the glasses, they start realizing that they are both actually the same water, but they are separated only because somebody added one essence here and another essence here. But otherwise, they are the same water. That is self-realization. Now, God realization means when this water realizes that all water is the same water, like we are all part of the same ocean. Every glass of water anywhere on the planet has the same source. See, Atman realization basically is saying that I am not this lemon juice. I am that water. That is self-realization. God realization means taking it to the next level, saying that water is the same as that water. In other words, this water is part of Brahman. So I am Brahman. That is I am Brahmasmi. That is God realization. So Brahma Samparsa or realization of Brahman, it will be like then you are actually living non-duality. You are living that whole Advaita concept. Now, once that happens, once God realization happens, there is no coming back. There is you have succeeded. You have won the game. Highest level possible. So the constant practice, the yogi is freed from all sin, vigata kalmasha, and the yogi is able to contact the supreme Brahma Samparsa and attains the supreme bliss. So that is what Dhyana Yoga in these shlokas were. I know we spoke a lot today, and I hope it's all making sense. My best wishes with all of you that you're all able to internalize some of this, and your whole perspective should change, and it's very empowering. I'm telling you, it's very, very empowering once we get there. So I think I've been talking too much. I spoke too much today. So I think I will stop talking. Leave the floor open. If you have any comments, questions, go ahead.
Your example about lime juice and rose water. So, I mean, if you have to apply to ourselves, so each of us is different. Like there's Chitra and there's Smita and there's Kapu and we all love. So we're all different. But at the end of the day, we're all connected to that Brahman. I mean, I'm just trying to relate the same thing. Like the example that you get water and then the final source of the water.
Yeah.
Would
so
it be right?
Exactly. So we are all different, but understanding that you are basically not Deepa, you are actually the Atma within you. And I am not Krishna Dasa, I am actually the Atma within me. And understanding that Atma is the same as this Atma.
Yeah.
That is self-realization. And then understanding that all these Atmas are actually part of Brahman. That is the next level God realization. So I hope that makes it clearer.
And Guruji, what was the another one after the God realization, which was like full of bliss?
That is it. God realization, then Brahma Samparsa. So once that happens, then you become Sachidananda, eternally blissful. Rajeshji, you were saying something?
Actually, what you said makes sense, and I understand. And I think it's coming back to the same thing you mentioned, right? Theoretical knowledge versus experiencing that, right?
Yes.
Because I think I could relate and I could understand now, but how I know it's a long journey, right? The way what I wanted to say is I am understanding, but I think understanding versus experiencing, they are totally different things, right?
Totally. So that is where Krishna is giving us a stepwise process. He's saying the first step is dhriti. That means, do you have conviction in your own understanding? Or are you saying that, this is what this Krishna Dasa is saying, but I have my own opinion? So that is the first step. Once dhriti comes, once the conviction comes in that understanding, then you will be able to sit and practice. Then go do dhyana with that conviction. And then you are in Dhyana Yoga, you will be able to actually focus on Brahman because now you have the conviction. If you don't have conviction, then how can you focus on something that you don't believe in, right? So that is a key to how do I realize. So you are already there. You are already halfway there. Now you already understand. You have the knowledge. The other half is now just build conviction in that knowledge, and then everything else will just follow. And trust me, the second part is easy, because once you have conviction, then God himself will help. God says your job is to get the conviction that I'm not going to force you. That is what God is saying. God is saying, Krishna also says that. Even at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna will tell Arjuna, I have given you the divine knowledge. What you do with it is up to you. I'm not going to hold your hand and force you, right? So the knowledge is given, but developing conviction is your free will. Now, if you choose, like if you choose to surrender and if you choose to build that conviction, then God says, then I will start helping you. The second part will then automatically start coming. You just have to keep practicing, it will come. That's all.
So,
Guruji, if the Atmas are all, sorry, Vikansh, you wanted to say something?
no, please go ahead. That's more interesting.
No, you said like we are identified by different names, but the internal Atma is the same. If the Atma is the same, the people are so different. Is that because of the samskara or the impressions that has been created through countless births? Because if Atma is the same,
exactly.
But if that is true, then but with some people, you identify very well, right? Is it because they have the same samskara as us? But with some people, you have a lot of friction. So if the Atma is the same, then why is that difference? Is that
so very good question, very profound question, and the answer is not that complicated. So first of all, there is a sanskara, there is karma. These two work in tandem. There are three types of karmas we discussed: sanchita karma, prarabdha karma, kriyamana karma. So there are many types of karma, and you have your own sanskaras that you have developed, and these two work together. Okay, that is one aspect. That is how every person seems to be different. But what is more important is the ego, because as we discussed, it's the ego that, like Smita, when you say I am Smita, that is the ego speaking. If there was no ego, there is no I am. That is why. So when you say I am get along with somebody, part of it is your ego. Your ego is saying, I like orange, that person likes orange, so that is why I like that person. Okay. So you are focusing a lot on the external aspects. You are focusing a lot. You means the ego. So it is the ego which does all this. I like this, I don't like this, and we tend to align more with people who have similar beliefs, who have similar, something similar. Because why? Because we think the way I am is the best. So anybody who is like me has to be, something I like. So that is how this whole attraction, aversion thing happens. So it's all a game of our own ego, our own mind. That is what creates all these differences. And the solution is very simple. Krishna is saying, once you have self-realization, you understand that Smita is the same as Vinayak or Krishnadasa or Suchita or whatever. Once that happens, these differences go away. And then take it to the next step and say that, okay, now you and I are same, but then both of us are part of that Anantam Brahman. And then once that happens, it's bliss. So I know this is a big question, and I can talk for hours on this, but I've tried to condense it. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
I want to talk about my experience, a small one.
Sure.
It is about this journey from where I started in the satsang. It's a very small thing that I realized that I have achieved, but a very small thing, but yes, it means a lot. When I started, I used to just feel, did I know this? Yeah, of course I knew it. Did I knew this? So it was all the things ego. Mujhe ye pata tha ya nahi tha. Now it is not about what I knew. It is about whether this is been understood and internalized. So it's definitely not possible to know everything, but only thing is to categorize. Oh, I knew this. Oh, I did not know this. So now it is coming to something different. Also, one thing I would like to share for all of us, which has benefited. Today, I decided that there are a lot of distractions when I am listening even to the lecture. A lot of distraction that happens in our routine life. Today, I decided I will take a paper and pen and I will start taking notes. If each one of us will start taking notes, of course, sir is going to give us the copy. But if we do that, then it helps us tremendously to concentrate on the lecture, and then not, small little parts go away when we are listening. We may or may not look at our own notes, but it will definitely help all of us to stay focused on each and everything.
I'm so happy that you shared this, Smitaji. I'm so happy. Thank you so much. You are absolutely right. And that is one of the reasons I ask you to turn your video on. It's not because I'm taking any separate pleasure in seeing your face or something, although I love to see everybody. But because I know how I deal with meetings. Office ka meeting ho raha hai, my video is off, I'm busy fooling around, and I'm only paying attention when my name is being called. But as long as I don't have to answer, I'm on Facebook, I'm on WhatsApp. That is how the mind works. So when you have your video on, naturally you are more aligned, you are more in the satsang. See, that is why I say you don't even need to be in my satsang. You can just listen to my podcast, my notes. But the biggest benefit of this satsang is you see each other. You get the energy of each other. You can sense the interest that every person has. And that is like a collective consciousness. That helps us focus better, that helps us internalize better. So Smitaji, you have been, what you said is very inspiring. Thank you so much. I'm really fortunate to have you in our satsang.
Thank you, sir. It means a lot. This was a great lecture. I mean, it is beyond words. I will not even start thinking how I can describe it. Thank you so much for today's session, especially. It means a lot.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. I know I've taken a lot of your time. Today, I told you in advance that we are going to go a little longer because I didn't want a break, because whatever we discussed, they are very connected to each other and together they make a big impact. That's why I wanted to keep it together. So I don't want to hold you much longer. So if you don't have any big questions, I think we can wrap up the session for today. And you can always contact me offline on WhatsApp. Okay, so Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Dear Satsang family, see you all again in the next lecture.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Guruji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Ram.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Guruji. Om Sai Ram.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.